Hey, it's Don. Today we're going to look at the top 20 rarest original soundtrack records out there right this second. What is selling for the most money for soundtracks in 2022? Now we're going to go over these in the cheapest to the highest first. So this is the lowest of the top 20 out there. This is Restless Breed, again, soundtrack, and this is on a very scarce Chevron label. Most people did not collect soundtracks. So soundtracks weren't some hot, flying off the shelf item back in this time frame. Now, one thing you'll notice, too, when going through these is that you are going to see a whole bunch that are tied to video games. 10 or 15 years ago, all the soundtracks were literally soundtracks from movies or maybe a television series in some cases. Video games have now overtaken many of the slots that were once held by actual movies. This is Sonic Adventures 1 and 2. It's a 12-inch soundtrack. Many of these were custom or limited edition boxed sets. This one they only made 300 of. Maybe something you could still run into. Some of these were giveaways as contest prizes. So you will run into some of these occasionally. One of the last things that people would imagine is that they made LPs for the soundtracks from old video games. But this is a perfect example. $740. Now here's another boxed set. This is Harry Potter, and it's the first 5 from the series in a boxed set. Now, there are quite a few of these out there. Any given day you look on eBay, you're going to see these selling in the $500 to, say, $750 range. The better the image, the better they sell. The better the wording, the better they sell. These sell better during Christmas time. It's something that you may see bought for a present. This is a sealed version as well. You cannot get much better than a sealed version of the whole box set. This one went for $600.
From what I've been told, he seemed like a completely normal individual.
Now, this one doesn't really need a lot of explaining. This is The Shining. Not a lot of people would be looking for the horror soundtrack to The Shining, so there weren't, again, a lot of these made. This one sold for $600 as well. Super, super scarce. A lot of the soundtracks from science fiction and horror movies will always sell for some decent money. Aliens, Star Wars, any of those classics always sell for $30, $40, $50. If it's in excellent condition, unopened, you can triple that in many different cases. Here's a prime example. This is Aliens, the original Aliens soundtrack. This one sold for almost $600. Now, eBay is a great source to sell these, as is Discogs, and even on Amazon, original soundtracks for movies, television, things like that will sell for some pretty good money. So you're not confined to just one site to find these sales, these items selling for these types of prices. Now, here's a vintage one from 1954. This is a 10-inch LP of Long John Silver. This is a classic. This one went for $763 quite some time ago. Now, in some cases, some of these records are so scarce that they just don't show up, but every 4 or 5 years. This one is an extremely scarce one, being that it's a 10-inch copy of this. There are some that can be found in 10-inch and the modern-day 12-inch. Now, this is from a transitional time frame when 78s were going out. They were switching from the 10-inch standardized record to a 12-inch because they came up with the 33 1/3 RPMs, and they were able to cram more onto the same space of better quality. So this is one of those transitional 10-inchers that you will run into.
Michael Caine is Carter. Get Carter before Carter gets you.
Now, this is the original Get Carter soundtrack. They did redo Get Carter, and I believe Sylvester Stallone plays the main character in the modern-day version of this. But this one is highly sought after. This is one of those that didn't do great in the theater or box office, but turned into a cult classic after it was re-released. So now this one is well sought after. They didn't make a lot of these. Wasn't expected to be a big hit or anything else like that. So this is a funk one as well. It's a stock copy also. A stock copy is the copy that would have been able to be purchased in any record store across the globe. Now, Pearl Jam's 20, the 20 soundtrack, is another one of those that sells for some phenomenal money. The records themselves are on colored vinyl also. There's several different versions of this. This is the standard copy that you will run into. It's a gatefold sleeve as well. Full color, it went for $800. This one's still fairly high up on the charts on what sells for good money. Now, this is Sexadelic, and this is a psychedelic soundtrack. It's just loaded with some good content in it. This is a very scarce one, sold from Germany. This one went for $822. One thing to consider too on these, the country of origin doesn't matter. People who are out there trying to find the ultimate soundtrack collection want some of these global pressings. They don't just want US versions or not. They want some of the rarest ones with the best music on them. And this is a psychedelic classic from 1971. Now, age doesn't always matter in some cases. There are some of these set versions from Twilight and the series itself that can go for some phenomenal money. Obviously, sealed is always best. There are some on specialty vinyl, there are some limited editions, but in general, any from Twilight, any of the series or sequels to it, will sell for some good money. It's one of those ones you always want to nab up. Now, I believe this is the special out-of-print version that included posters with it as well. If you don't have everything that came with the original record, the price that's stated for some of these records will be nowhere near what you see it going for here. You have to have a complete, near mint, untouched, excellent copy with all of the inserts, the posters, for it to garner this price. Now, that goes for any record. It has to be complete. It has to include everything that came with it for it to garner the top end price. Here's yet another boxed set. This is Lord of the Rings. Most of these were in limited production. Some of these they made 5,000, some they made 8,000. It depends on the version that you run into. Obviously colored vinyl. This shows the books and all the box and the papers and posters that come with this. It did go for $1,100 plus. Again, it depends on the condition. It depends on the edition that you have as to how much this will go for. This is the smaller print run of only 5,000 copies. Again, there are other versions. There are also mass-produced versions that were available to the general public just on standard vinyl. Here's an excellent, brand new, original copy of The Crow with Brandon Lee. His last movie, unfortunately. This is one of those underground cult classic movies. Now, as far as I remember, they actually finished the movie after he had passed. It was already done, his parts, and they had someone stand in for him. Wasn't a lot of these pressed either, and that's why this one goes for so much money. Of course, this one is as well in new condition. It's pristine, it's untouched, it's an original as well. Now, back to a classic here. This is Beatles' A Hard Day's Night. This is a sealed mono soundtrack. Now, many people will assume that the stereo version is the one you want, but in most cases, some of these earlier records were first pressed, the very first edition of any of these, first pressings, are all mono. Stereo may have come later for many editions of these records, so you wouldn't find them in the mono edition. Many cases, the mono version will be worth far, far more than any stereo version of the same record, even if it's the first stereo edition of that record. And as you can see, it went for $1,000. Now here's another video game. This is Red Dead Redemption. This is a hot one. It's a limited one as well. It's on colored vinyl. This one states it's in VG plus condition. So it's not even near mint, and it still went for almost $1,000. If you're not aware of some of these, you may have no clue. Most people, again, may not even assume that there's a record soundtrack to Red Dead Redemption. They may see this hanging up somewhere and assume it's, say, a calendar. Now here's a Mondo pressing. This is Batman the Animated Series. This is very scarce. Like new, it's the whole set. It's got them all in it. This is extremely, extremely scarce. This is one of those limited runs also. But this ranks up there as one of the hottest selling soundtracks out there. The animated series of all things. So over $1,000 for this TV soundtrack. Now, some are so scarce that you won't even find them in a sleeve. You might just find the record itself. And this is by Jerry Goldsmith. Very, very, very well known. He did quite a few soundtracks. This is the General with the Cockeyed ID from the 60s. This is a promotional copy. There are some of these that do show up. You're not going to find it, chances are, in a cover, in a sleeve, or anything else like that. It's just going to be loose, thrown in with stuff. This is one of those areas that many people may miss. People assume that if the record cover isn't there or it's damaged, that it's not going to carry a value. But many, many times we have sold records without the covers, LP records, 12-inch records, without the covers for very good money, for hundreds. This is $1,000 and some change. Now here's a real oddball one. This is Loupe. This is a super, super scarce one. This one had some major bids on it. 56 bids, it went for $1,100. If you check on eBay, you're going to find that these do show up, but they all sell in the $5 to $1,000+ range every time they come up. Even in poor condition, these still will sell. People will still want a space filler. In many cases, some of these may not even be collected by record collectors, but more so the movie collector or collecting it because of the cover. Here's another video game. This is Chrono Trigger, and this is the complete box set from Super Nintendo Entertainment System. This is an earlier one. Very, very scarce. You should be able to tell by the price of almost $1,600. Any ones from video games, even CDs, cassette tapes from video game soundtracks, all sell for some pretty good money. The records, though, are the king of the heap. They always sell for the most. Now, here's another one of those that's been selling for years for $1,000+. This is Speedway by Elvis. It's the original pressing of it. It's extremely scarce. 35 bids, $3,500. This has been selling for $1,000+, as I said, for at least a decade. This is one of the old standard reliable ones that anytime you find the Speedway copy of it, you're going to run into some good money. It's LPM-3989. That is the RCA Victor number. You have to have the original version of this, the original pressing, again, as it states in there, and it has to be the mono version. This is the second rarest soundtrack that I'm aware of that's been selling for years in the same price range. This is the top of most people's lists when it comes to soundtracks.
From the studio that gave you the Academy Award-winning From Here to Eternity.
And the rarest one that's been the rarest one for as long as I can remember is the Kane Mutiny. Now this one states it's the best copy on the planet, mint disc. Hence the price of $7,000. I have seen this one selling anywhere from $3,000 or so on the bottom end for one in not so great condition up to this $7,000 mark here. This is the highest priced selling soundtrack of this type that I have ever seen, and it's been holding the test of time. This one has always been worth a lot of money. They did not press a lot of these. This is an old record. It's been around for a very long time, so there's just not many of them around. A lot of these were destroyed, damaged, or they just weren't in great condition. A lot of people wouldn't be hunting for the Kane Mutiny's soundtrack even when the movie was hot and just out. So this is the #1 hottest soundtrack, the rarest one, and the most valuable one on the planet as of right now. Well, there we have it. Hopefully that gave you some ideas, some thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified if I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell all your friends.
Sounds like you've accidentally invented a thermochemical energy source.
A scientific wonder becomes a nightmare.
Someone's walking around with enough explosive to turn the city into a pancake.
A power that could mark the beginning of the end for the $6 Million Man.